Hey, what's up guys? My name is Moda and welcome back to the Mining Stacker YouTube channel. Today's video, we do have officially the most powerful and the most efficient Bitcoin ASIC, and it wasn't one of the ones that were announced yesterday. This one was announced later on after. In reality, this is the real flagship, which for whatever reason Bitmain is trying to hide from us. Okay, so we're going to talk about it. We'll look at the specs, which are astounding. Just as a heads up, it's over a petahash for a single freaking unit. We'll talk about it. We'll look at the specs. We'll kind of compare it to the others. If that sounds good, guys, stay tuned. Let's get right to this thing. Ugh, it's freaking crazy, right? So in reality, this is the flagship. Extremely weird that Bitmain didn't announce this as their flagship. Do have a couple theories as to why, but let's look at the specs. So this is the U3S23 Hyd. You can definitely see the form factor, and it is what? It's that server style form factor. This one being a lot thinner than the previous one and a lot more refined, right? So to me, this is what I was kind of interested in. What were they going to do as their flagship? This is obviously where the industry is going. So that's why I was kind of almost surprised when they announced the Hydro unit being the old rectangle box, when in reality, the industry is definitely pivoting more towards this form factor. And again, extremely weird that they didn't highlight it during the keynote. The highlight was on their regular ones. Why? And it's probably because of all the infrastructure they're selling is still for the previous units versus this guy. Okay, we've seen a lot of the other manufacturers as well as aftermarket suppliers and manufacturers of these containers, different racks and such are all pivoting toward this form factor because in reality, this is the form factor that makes sense for density. With these Hydro units, the massive advantage you have is with density. Okay, so again, looking at the specs, 1,160 terahash, over a petahash for one freaking unit. Last generation, it would take you 10 of the traditional air-cooled ASICs to equal that freaking little thing. The density difference is massive. Okay, so 1,160 terahash, 11,000 watts for a single unit. So again, this isn't for plebs. This is for three-phase. You need serious infrastructure to be able to host this thing. And then it has the efficiency of the Hydro unit that was unveiled, being at 9.5 joules a terahash. Insane. Same timeline though. It's releasing Q1 2026. Again, just extremely weird that they didn't highlight it during that time. It was a tweet that was released after, and it is releasing all in the same window. Okay, obviously they did definitely refine the design, because if we compare it to the other one, the S21 EXP, you can see how it's a lot more crude looking. It was most likely initially a custom unit, but they probably, I'm sure, saw a lot of demand for it. You can see how much clunkier it is, how much thicker it is, how different that design is. Okay, one criticism I'll say though, like I don't understand why they're not kind of, again, going with the typical where they have all the inputs, outputs on the back of this thing. Okay, maybe this is the rear. I kind of highly doubt it just because, again, we see the handles here. We see the rivets here. There are handles on the back here. But again, typically, that probably should have been in the back just for more cleaner look, easier install, etc., etc. I mean, regardless, it's kind of irrelevant. The reason is, again, there seems like they're hiding it yet again, because again, it's not even on their website. So on the tweet, it did go for sale this morning, was never on the website. Like even going through it, because it'll still show out of stock or sold out products here also, and it's not on here, right? Extremely weird. Also the same story even with this guy. It didn't get its own show. It didn't really get an announcement, right? It was kind of a low-key announcement. The only people who really got this thing were a lot of these big farms. So it's kind of weird, right? I think a lot of it, again, just has to do with they still have so much of the previous infrastructure to sell still, which I don't know if you've been paying attention to their like X account. A lot of fire sales on the older S19 XP hydros, as well as the Ant racks. There's been fire sales with those, like selling them in package deals. Think that has a lot to do with it. So again, it does seem like this is where the pivot's going to be. This was my expectation for it. And it seems like they are doing it. They're just kind of keeping on the DL because, again, they still have to sell all that old infrastructure, right? So as we look at profitability, this thing is freaking insane. Again, this is at a 10-cent kilowatt hour, which, again, isn't realistic just because, again, if people who are going to be having this thing, they're not going to be on residential rates, right? They're going to be like sub 5 cents. whatever rate they're at. But again, even looking at this comparison, their daily revenue about 65 freaking bucks, $26 a day in electric at that rate. Obviously, again, if they're at a nickel, it's going to be half of that. It'll be 13 bucks. So profitability at a 10 cents, 38. For them, it'd be about $51 a day per freaking unit. Okay. As we compare it to some of the others, again, to the previous king, this was 860 terahash, which was a pretty big deal. 11,180 watts. But again, this new unit, a good amount better, right? This guy's 13 joules a terahash versus the 9.5, and again, 1160. And also the design. Design is much more refined. It looks like something they actually did. It wasn't just like a one-off unit. Definitely quite a bit better, right? And so we look at the overall specs, we compare it to the S23 Hydro, it's literally just double of that, right? It's if you double the hash rate, the power, it brings you to exactly the 3U unit, right? Which is interesting because, again, from a density factor, I mean, you can just fit so many more of these freaking units with this form factor versus this old weird style that they started, right? They were the OGs with the Hydro units back in the S19 generation. Kind of experimental because the industry as a whole, it was kind of unclear what was going to be more popular. Hydro units or immersion units, which are the units that are pretty much inside a tank and they're liquid cooled in that capacity. Obviously, it seems like the pivot is going to be here because to me, it's the form factor that makes the most sense, right? Especially coming from a density factor, is just immense how many units you can fit, right? And even in Bitmain's own infrastructure, right, they just released the AMRAC V2, which is a little half rack, and they have the cooler separate, right? The previous unit, it was all contained in one unit. Even with this guy, you could either fit 2 of the shoe boxes or 4 of the server style, right? So even here, it looks like they are starting to accommodate the server style. That is going to start being a thing, and it's kind of what makes sense, right? Because again, as we look at the density factor of these things, we referenced this video before. Shout out to Tianqi Arc Bitcoin mining. Just so you can kind of get an idea of the density. For you guys who've been to like any of the mining disrupts, you've been able to see the containers and just the density factor, guys. I mean, imagine every single one of those could be over a freaking petahash, right? So you can see how quickly and immensely and freaking ridiculous it is, right? It is just like mind-boggling. And imagine if all of these freaking things were all just those things. It's mind-boggling, the density. I mean, we've seen tours of the others, right? A lot of them have the older typical air-cooled units. It's just the density factor here, though, is insane. It's like almost unfathomable to think of how much, because again, consider also every unit 11,000 watts. Like, it's just the scale of it can potentially be insane, right? It's again extremely hard to even really conceive mentally. It's crazy, but again, this does seem like it is where the industry is going, especially on the industrial front. Obviously, for us plebs, it can come down the road. I mean, I would actually really be interested in single phase units of these things. Because again, especially how they're like marketing the ant rack. Specifically, they're trying to make it easy to repurpose that heat. So think of replacing your water heater with this thing. You guys have a pool in the wintertime, using it as a pool heater and such. They're trying to make it easy to be able to retrofit these things in there. Not just kind of a theoretical, you can hacksaw your way in, but just like almost a plug and play solution is kind of the ideal goal with these things. And it's just kind of insane to think about. But realistically, I mean, when we look at, for example, Seal Miner's Hydro unit, and this is how a lot of the others are also, including like the What's Miner. We've seen script ASICs that are also following this trend. And you can kind of just see, let's see if they have a picture of it in the front. There we go. Whereas just all the lines should be in the back, right? It kind of makes more sense to do it that way. We'll see. Again, it's Gen 1. Their other units, though, are also that way. So even like these Hydro units, like they look a freaking mess. Like if you ever see the containers of these things, like especially if it's in a hot climate area, all these plastic hoses. Imagine the maintenance on those things, especially if you're like in super dry Texas, like having to replace all those plastic hoses. Each unit has all these freaking hoses. Like it'd be a freaking nightmare versus a lot of the newer ones. It's an in and out on the back. That's it. There's no need for all of this, but again, it does seem like they are innovating. This to me is just the design that makes the most sense, right? And eventually, I could see it definitely next gen, next cycle, where there are single phase versions of these things. And instead of having to ghetto rig all these big air cooled ASICs on our racks and coming up with these crazy heat circulation things, to just have a dry cooler plumb through the wall on the outside, like in your garage or whatever, right? Or being able to repurpose that excess heat. Like, it's definitely a much more appealing design to have like a server rack in your garage versus the contraptions we've all created in order to have these things in our house. For those of you guys who do, right? So a lot of these big air cooled ASICs are not necessarily meant for that, but a lot of us, we have figured out ways to just have them in the garage, right? But pretty interesting. And again, just the big thing is density, and the hash rate is just going to continue to go up, guys. Like, there's no slowing this down. We do know a lot of these big farms who have been building throughout this bear market. A lot of them are going live within these next like 3 months or so. And a lot of hash rate is coming online, right? So even with the old guys unplugging, the more less efficient guys, there's so much more hash coming online, right? So currently we're up to about 959 exahash. We have peaked over the zettahash point, but we're waiting to see what the overall average is as BTC's price continues to go higher, because again, we're like at 107,000 currently. As it just continues to go up, people are just going to be plugged in, right? And some people are waiting for eventually for it to go higher and higher, but again, the hash rate is just going to go higher and higher also, right? So the key trend difference, especially this coming bear market, if and when we do have a bear market, it's going to be interesting to see how things played out, just because again, it's gotten so immensely competitive and oversaturated. It's literally to the point where I don't think a lot of these big mining farms are going to make it if we do have a bear market. Things are drastically different when a lot of these guys invested all the money, all the infrastructure. Things were way different. Okay, if we look at the hash price index, if we look at back to what it was like last bull market cycle, again, during the peak phases, during these peak times, it's like $300-$400 a freaking petahash. Okay, look at where BTC's price is right now, which again, this is when BTC was at like 60 to 70,000. We're currently at 107, and look where our freaking chart is now. We're down to $55, and this is with a freaking $107,000 Bitcoin. If we get a bear market, if we go back down into the 50, 60K range, let's say 6 months into 2026, I don't think a lot of these big mining companies are going to make it, especially the ones who aren't being smart and holding on to as much Bitcoin as they can. It's gonna be crazy, bros. It's definitely going to be a game changer. It's definitely different this time, right? There's no doubt about it. The hash rate has just gone up at such an exponential point. Like, yes, there are a ton of emissions. It's over like $50 million a day. But at this point, there arguably is too much hash rate on the network to support all these big entities, all these big companies that are just continuing to grow, right? Especially the ones that are going even outside of the US, right? In reality, those are the ones that are going to make it, right? We're complaining because of our electric rates when we're at residential, like 15 cents. It's going to get to the point where the only people mining this thing are going to be people who are like sub 2 cents or essentially subsidized from that country or that nation state. And that's who's going to be running the network after a certain point, right? It's going to get to a point where, again, a lot of these guys, especially the ones who are self-hosting, they're not anywhere near even our like hosting rates of people saying like 7-8 cents. A lot of these guys are sub 4 cents a kilowatt hour. Some cases sub 2 cents, especially I've talked to a lot of you guys outside of the country, in South America, in the Middle East, where you are literally sub a penny a kilowatt hour. Okay, that's who you're competing against. Just keep those things in mind. Like, everybody's thought process is like, oh, those S19s are all going to get kicked off. Hash rate will go down a lot. Guess where all of that old hardware is going, right? If your electric is basically free, you're getting all the hash rate you can get, right? So when people are liquidating those S19s, I know people have seen the prices of like 250 and such. For people who are liquidating them in bulk, I've seen as low as like sub $100 for S19s for people buying, like 1,000 plus units. Okay, where do you think all of those are going? They're going overseas, right? So don't be so quick to think that, oh, all these things are going to get priced out. They're going to get priced out here in the US and maybe in a lot of countries, especially definitely residential guys, not necessarily out of the country, right? So our best bet, if you do want to mine on anything over like 5 cents a kilowatt hour, it's efficiency, right? Because a lot of these things, a lot of these units do cost a lot of money, right? So it doesn't necessarily mean that all these big places are going to upgrade now. Maybe they're going to try to get as long as they can out. So it's just things to consider. I know, like, I start getting this mode where I want a BTC ASIC, but then we see things like this, and it's a reminder, right? So at the end of the day, we don't know. Maybe it'll pan out realistically. I do sometime, maybe not to the next bull market, do really want to get a BTC ASIC, just because, again, I'm already DCAing into it no matter what. So might as well, even if I'm just breaking even, might as well do it on the mining side, right? So we'll see how things go. We'll see how things pan out, but it's just insane, bros. It's insane. Think of like the density, like filling up a container with these things is just mind-blowing. Let me know, guys, what do you guys think? What do you guys think of the state of Bitcoin ASIC mining? I know in general that's been the consensus for a lot of us, but I know a lot of people are still buying S21 XPs or looking for things that are efficient. Let me know in the comments, guys, what do you think overall BTC ASIC mining from the perspective of residential plebs, right? Please comment, like, and subscribe, guys. Thank you for watching. I really do appreciate it, and I am out.